Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to the Vue 3. So now in this video, I'm going to explain that how we're going to work with the Vue front end, and here are the concepts that we need to understand. So first I'm going to go into the Vue.js.org. Make sure you just see the documentation getting started here. So the progressive JavaScript framework, and if I click on the get started, so they are like the things that you need to understand first. So I'm trying to explain things which are important, and there are a lot of stuff that is like here in the Vue documentation, but we are like gonna be very specific with the project, right? So just want to go through with that. What is Vue? So Vue is a JavaScript framework for building user interfaces. So it's built on the top of the standard HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. So here is a very basic, very basic example for this. So we have like a create app, and we have the ref. So this ref is like a reactive state, and we have like a setup method. So there are a few changes which we're gonna talk about in this project. So like we have two ways to define the component in Vue. So the first very basic traditional way is the options API, and the other way is the composition API, which is in the Vue 3. So I'm going to explain you both of them, but we are going to stick with the composition API because that's the main part of this project, right? So there is an example you're going to go through with that, and there is like a declarative rendering and the syntax for this. So there are a lot of stuff that you guys can see here through it. So make sure once you're gonna start with the Vue framework, make sure you have installed the Node.js, and that's the very important. That if you watch my first video, so I hope you guys have already installed the Node.js, right? All right, so I also have my MongoDB, as we have created the collections already here. We have set up our database in the MongoDB. So you guys also make sure you have like established the connection in your Node.js. And if I go back to my Visual Studio Code as my project, you can see that my project is all up and running on port 3000, and the database is connected with that connection string, right? And that's the name of the, it's the name of the database, which is contact_app, right? So my project is up and running. So here I'm going to create here the very first thing, which is the Vue project. So I already in my empty blank Visual Studio Code, and let's create here a project here. So inside my tutorial, so it's up to you wherever the directory you guys have followed, and I have followed like the Fullstack_contact_app. That's my backend, which I have created in the Node.js. So I'm going to create another folder, and let's give it the name of the Vue. So Vue_contact_app, and you guys can even change that front end or back end. It's up to you. So I'm going to stick with that name, right? So this is the folder that I have created. So I'm going to back into my VS Code, and let's import that project. So I'm going to go to my desktop. It's basically in my folder with the name of tutorial, and I'm going to open that up. All right, so I have a blank folder here. So I'm going to open my terminal, and here where I'm going to install our very first Vue.js project, right? So I'm going to clearing out my terminal, and let's write some commands to install the Vue. So I'm going to install the Vue with the terminal. So let's write here npx and create -vue@latest. And as long as I press enter, so it's going to ask some few questions. So it's first going to ask the project name. So I'm going to like make that Vue-contact_app. So that's the project name, and rest of the things I all make no. So we have like set up some few of the routes that's gonna ask. So they're like a PNF for state management. We are not gonna use this. We have like VI test for testing. We don't need that. And I don't need any end-to-end solution. So there's like ESLint for code quality. Make that DevTools 7 extensions. I don't need that. And that's gonna create the project for our Vue-contact-app, all right? And if I'm gonna go inside this folder, let me go into the cd into Vue-contact-app, and here you can see these are the bunch of the files that are created here. So inside here we have our source public folder. We have also our like v.config.js file. So it's still not going to work because we have to install the npm. So I'm going to install the node package manager here, and this is going to create the file for us, which is the node_module. All right, so once it's created, we have node_modules, which has a lot of folders inside it. A lot of dependencies are there, and inside our package.json file, that's the file which we're going to talk about first. So right inside here in the package.json file, we have like basic things like the name, the version, and the private. The type is module. Again, this is gonna ask either it's like a common module. And next we have dependencies inside here. We have like a Vue, which is the version, which is 3.4 version that we're gonna use. And we also have a Vite, which is the dev dependencies. And this is the dev dependencies. That's where our local project is gonna be run on the local machine with the help of Vite. All right, so inside the vite.config.js file, we have a lot of stuff here, but usually this file is you can use and like define your port if you want, right, inside the define configuration. So this is the plugin that we have installed, and everything is like imported from the Vue. All right, so very basic files and figures. We have our public folder where we have our favicon, and inside the source folder, that's a folder where we have our components and the assets. So inside our main.js file, first I'm going to talk about this file, and we have something which is the create app, which is import from the Vue, and right inside it, it's going to mount the app ID, and this app ID is coming from the index.html file, and that's the div with the ID of app. It's basically where our UI is going to be rendered. All right, so right inside the components, so they are like components that are already defined, and that's the app.vue component that is already like included. So if I'm going to run my server with the help of npm run dev, so this is going to run the local servers for us. So if I'm going to go into the terminal, let me gonna go into the localhost 5173, and you can see this is the boilerplate, right, for the Vue component, right? And everything that you see, it's all like defined up here, and this is the logo and the height and the width. So you can also change the title if you go inside your index.html file, and I'm going to change the title to, let's make that contact app. All right, and if I just gonna save it, so because it's like the page reload with the help of Vite, so we have like a reactivity, so it's gonna hard reload. And if I'm gonna refresh this, even I don't need to refresh, sorry, so you see now the title has been changed, right? And like there are other components that we don't need it, like the welcome component, like we have the hello world. So like there are a bunch of components that like we don't need. So I'm gonna delete all of them, and let's gonna go into the hello world. I'm not need the welcome item.vue, so let's gonna delete them and move to the trash. And inside the app.vue, I'm gonna remove everything inside the app.vue. And the icons folder, I'm going to delete that up as well. So let's delete the icon folder. So my icons folder deleted, and inside the assets, I'm going to only delete the base.css and the logo.svg. So I'm going to delete that one. Move to the trash, and if you go to my main.js file, why I didn't delete that? Because that has been imported, and that's where we're going to define our custom.css, right? And saves it, right? And now if I'm going to go back to my, and you see it says that base.css is still defined somewhere, so we have to remove that one as well. So, and I have to delete that from the where it's going to define, that's where it's defined in the main.css, so also make that empty. All right, and now it also shows the other errors. It says that at least one template or script is required. So in order to go back to your app.vue, I have to define here the scripts or the template. So I'm going to define here the template. So I have installed here the Vueter extension. So before, these are the suggestions it's going to give you. So I'm going to show you the Vueter extension, VEUT, I think it's something, yeah, Vueter. So this is the extension that I've installed, and you guys can see the suggestions with that. So let's go back to your app.vue, and I'm going to define here a very basic html.vue template, right? And saves it. So now you see it's removed the error, and I also going to define h1 if I want, and I'm going to make that contact app. All right, saves it. So you see now it's going to work the contact app here, right? So these are the things that we can do in the app.vue. So there are a few more changes that I'm going to do. I have like the components folder, which is also inside our source folder. So inside the source, we have our components folder, but I think maybe I deleted, so let's create that one here again. Maybe I mistakenly delete that. So inside source, we have our components folder, and inside components folder, I'm going to create like few of the components in this project. So let's create the file. So the first I'm going to create here is the contact list.view. So this is the where we're going to display our listing for the contacts. This is the contact list component. So we basically divide different components inside the view. So every component has its own logic, has its own functionality. So this is the first component, contact list. Let's create another one, the add contact dot view, and I'm also going to define the added contact dot view, and another very important component that I'm going to define, which is the header dot view. All right, so these are the components that I have created, and every component has its own functionality. Like in the header, I'm going to define the nav bar, where we have like a different routes. We're going to set up the routes as well, and we're going to install the bootstrap as well. So I'm going to define like few of the things that I'm going to show you real quick, that in order to install the bootstrap, and if I go back to the bootstrap, so bootstrap navbar, I just strictly either you can go to navbar directly. I'm going to use here bootstrap, and bootstrap help you to define things very easy. Like you have a powerful responsive navigation headers, and it makes things a lot easier. So we have a lot of examples here. So this is the first example. If you guys, you can pick any one of them, but I'm going to pick the very basic navbar here. So let me go down here, and I believe it should be so which one I have to pick one? I have to pick one of them. So maybe this one is also good to go. Maybe, yeah, just grab this one. Yeah, just copy this one navbar, and I'm gonna paste it right up inside my header.view. All right, and I just put it, if I just saves it, so it's still, you see, it's not going to read that one. So I have to close this one and cut this one, and inside the html.view I'm going to paste this one, right? And it's still not going to show. So inside my add contact.view, I have to define, let's define the simple heading for each of the components. So let's give it the h3 to be add contact component. Saves it, and this is gonna be a contact list component. So let's define that inside the template. So here I have like a contact list component, and we have our edit contact. So let's define that as well. So it would be added contact component, and inside the header I already defined the bootstrap. So we have to install bootstrap, so it's still not gonna work directly. So in order to install the bootstrap, and you see here, like still we have our, if I go to my browser, still there's like not much padding, and because bootstrap automatically give you default container padding, which is 16 pixels. So I'm gonna go and back into my terminal, and let's define up here the install the bootstrap. So in order to install the bootstrap here, I'm going to define with the terminal, it should be npm install, and it should be bootstrap, and the version which I'm going to use here 5.3.0, right, and install this one. And I'm also going to install the popper.js, which is basically used for like a scripting, where we have like a JavaScript functionality where I have like a toggle which will work with the help of popper.js, right? So let's install that too. So npm install popper.js/core and press enter. So this is going to install the bootstrap. Now if I go back into my browser, and you see here, I believe it's installed, but still I can't see any padding into it. So in order to work with that, yeah, I have to go into my main.js file, and that's the file where we have to define our bootstrap.min.css and the popper and the bootstrap bundle. So I need to import it up here. So let's import that and make that path to be bootstrap. It should be /dist/css, and it should be inside the bootstrap.min.css. Now you see we are like having a lot of suggestions here because you install the package for the bootstrap. And if you go and check in the package.json file, these are the dependencies that we have installed. All right, so back into the main.js file, and next we have our another import, which is the bootstrap /dist/ now this is the JavaScript / and again we can see a lot of suggestions, but I'm gonna use a bootstrap.bundle.min.css, so bundle.min.js, yeah, and saves it. So still we have to use that in order to work the bootstrap. So like there's one more way, because I have to use different kind of packages. The first thing that I have to use, which is the bootstrap, and we also gonna use here some routers, which I'm gonna do later. We can also separate the create app, and let's do it now. And how I'm gonna do here is, let's comment this out and comment this out so you guys could see. So I'm gonna create here a variable with the name of app equal to create app, and let's define here the app component, and inside that app.view, just below it, I'm gonna mount it. I just separated this so we can like mount the app ID, right? If I just saves it and go back to my browser, and you can see here that we can see now our contact app is gonna work. So this is how we can if I just inspect this, and you can see that we have like a different options. So in order to more just give it the container class, and check this out. So if I go to my app.view, and let's give it the bootstrap class of text-danger, and saves it, so it's gonna change that into the red color. So that shows that now the bootstrap has been installed and used, right? And that's how we're gonna define. So another thing that we can do here, we can also define the logic. So again, there are like a lot of suggestions in JavaScript. I'm gonna use this, so export default, and that's where we have to define our logic part. And also we have something which is the style, which is the CSS style scope. So I'm gonna pick this one, maybe, yeah. So there is something which is known as scoped. All right, so that means that only the CSS that's gonna be used here, it's gonna be only pertains to that component, right? So, all right, now let's first define the header here. So I'm gonna go into my app.view, and let's remove this h1 from here, and also inside the component I don't need the scoped, so remove this one. And inside the scripts, let's define above the export default, and I'm gonna import my header. So let's import the header here with the path of from the /component/ and the name of the header.view file. All right, and inside the export default we have to work with the components object. So let's define here, and inside the components object we have to define and return the header. So this is the header that we will view. So still it's not gonna show because we have to go inside our template and define here the header component. So it should be header, and let's close that one up here. All right, now if I saves it, and if you go back to the browser, and you see now you can see the header. And I have to do here a few changes. We have to create here two links, and I want to make that into the dark. So let's go into the header.view, and inside this component I'm going to do here a few changes. First, change the navbar -brand with the contact app, which I'm going to pass it with as a props. I'm going to show you. So let's change that bg-light into dark, and also the navbar into the dark. And here inside this I don't need this span. Let's remove this one here, and I also don't need these links, and only one more link that I need here, which is the create contact. All right, so this is gonna be our second link, and this is gonna be the first link. And later we're gonna change that anchor class into the router-link. That's how the routes work in the Vue, which I'm gonna show you just real quick after this. So right after this here, I need to change here one more thing, which I'm going to show you into the browser. So first go into the browser and check the changes. So it's you can see now our changes has been reflected here. So if I go and inspect this out, and if I go to my console, so you see here, if I'm gonna like click on this toggle, so it's not gonna work. So let me refresh this and click here. Yeah, now it's fine. And you see it's not clickable. So in order to change that, and if you want to work this, because we have used here the Bootstrap version, which is 4.0, and inside here we have used 5.3.0. so like there's a few changes that you have to do inside the target and the data-toggle. Just change that to data-bs-toggle, and which is in the Bootstrap 5 version, and also here -bs-target. And if I go back to the browser, and you see now is the toggle is working because of the JavaScript we have enabled inside the Vue. All right, so that's the first part of it. And now I have to pass here as a props. As I told you, we can change the navbar -brand and pass it as a prop. So in order to pass it as a title, and I have to go back to my app.vue, and inside app.vue I'm going to define here the title. So let's define here a props with the name of title, and you can name it here contact app, and we're going to pass this props inside our header.vue. So in order to pass this, we have our something which is known as define props. All right, so right after the template I'm going to define here the scripts. So inside the scripts, so export default, and I'm gonna pass here the props object. So props, and inside the props object we have like a title, which should be of type string. You can also give it the type number if it's a number, and let's make that required to be true. All right, saves it, and here I'm gonna change that to the let's change the name to pass here as a title, which is coming from here, right? So that title has been passed here. All right, so if I go back here and check, so you see here we can see the contact app here, right? So the reason why I show you with this way, this is basically the option API, right? Now in order to change that to the composition, it's a very basic way, a more easier and lenient way. So what I'm going to do here is simply define here a script with the setup. So let's define here javascript.vue, and I'm going to remove this one from here. I don't need to define setup, so all you need to do, just simply bring up here setup, and you have to define here a props variable and make that define props. And inside the defined props, I'm going to bring everything here, right? So the title and the type string. Now, if I go back and check this out into the browser, so you see here, I can also show the contact app. So same thing here. So it's in the different color, maybe, yeah. Okay, it's fine. Yeah, so that's also the other way. So you see here, it's like more line of code, yeah. So now it's very small. So I'm going to remove, actually just because of this. So I'm going to remove this from here and just bring this up here. Saves it, and still we have the same thing. All right. All right. So now we have defined our navbar, the header component. We also bring our script, and we define the props. So let's go and define the routes first. So in order to install the routes, I'm gonna go into the new terminal, and let's create here the routes. So in order to install the routes, we have a command to install that. So npm install, and bring here the vue-router@next and press enter. So this is gonna install the router first for the Vue. All right, so inside our source folder, I'm going to create here a file with the name of routes.js. All right, so now inside the routes.js, we have to import there like two very important components, like if I'm going to bring here import, and which has been coming from the Vue-router, and let's define here the first one, which is the which can create the router, which is create router, and other one is the create web history. All right, so these are the two things which are coming from the Vue-router. And next thing I'm going to do here is let's create here a variable with the name of routes equal to, so I'm going to define here routes, so it should be in the parentheses, right? Make sure that. All right, so inside those parentheses, I'm going to bring here the name and the name of the component, which should be contact list. And next we have our path, which should be slash. And we have to define here the component name, so let's make that component, which should be contact list. All right, so the next thing that we have here is the add contact, so I'm going to define here the name, which should be add contact, and I'm going to give it the path of create-contact. And next we have our component name, which should be add contact. So let's bring up here add, sorry, it should be without the single quotes, so it should be add contact. All right, so still it's not going to import our component, so let's bring up here on the top after I define another route, which is like the added contact. So let's define a name, added contact, and the path should be slash contact slash ID. Now this ID is coming from the so make sure it should be slash colon ID. All right, so it could be anything, so that's why I bring here the question mark, any ID. If there is an ID, so it should be here. So next we have our component. Let's bring up here the component name, which should be added contact, right, and saves it. So I'm going to define here the name of the components here. So first we have our import the contact list. So import the contact list from the component, so it should be ./components/contact list.view. Next import here the add contact, which is also coming from the ./components/add contact.view. And the last we have to import here is the added contact, which is coming from the ./component/added contact.view. All right, and that's it. So now we have defined all our three routes, and right below it I'm going to define and create a router. So const router, and inside the create router we have our history, and actually I need to bring this out of this, so it should be out of the routes variable. Yeah, it should be here, and right inside here I'm going to define the history, and that will be create web history. Should be a method, and next thing that you need to define is your routes. All right, and saves it, and we have to export the router, so it should be export default router. All right, so now we have defined our routers. All right, now we have to use that router. So in order to use that, again I need to go into my main.js file. As you see that we have defined our bootstrap and import up here inside our main.js. So let's define here the router. So I'm going to use just above the ID of app, I'm going to define app.use and define here the router. And this router is coming from the let's define and import the router. So import router from routes. All right, now if you go back to the browser and try to refresh this, it's showing some error actually. Let's go back and see. It says that route path should start with a slash, should be /create-contact. Yeah, so if I go to my routes.js and right inside the create-contact, I need to do is to bring here a slash, just as like it's showing the in the console. So if I bring here a slash, now it's going to show up here. All right, so these links still won't work because we have to define something which is the router inside our app.vue, which is our parent component. That's where everything loads. So inside the template, I'm going to bring up here something which is known as router-view. And let's bring up here router-view. Without this, it's not going to work. And after this, still we need to define inside our header.view something which is known as the router-link, because router-link in Vue, if you want to route something, so these anchor tags won't work. So I'm going to change that to router-link, and it should be the closing one as well, the same router-link, same for here. So router-link, and here also router-link. I'm going to give it the href to be 2. And same for here, and make sure it should be the same name, create dash contact. All right, so make sure the names should be correct. If I'm going to show you inside the routes.js, so whatever you name it here, it should be the same path, right? Okay, so now we are good to go, and let's check this out. So if I go back to the browser, and you see now we are able to see the contact list component, and the reason why, because this is the component that I want to show into the home page. So this is the contact list component, and where the links goes. Yeah. So if I'm gonna go into the create contact, so it's gonna show me the add contact component, right? So now you see we are able to route to different pages, right? All right. So now we are done with our router part. So go into our contact list.view, and here I'm going to define my very basic listing. All right, so inside the contact list component, I'm going to remove this h3, and I'm going to define here with the help of Bootstrap, I'm going to create here a table. So let's create here a container class, and inside the container class, I'm going to create here a table with the class of table.table-hover. All right. And inside the table, I'm going to give the table headings. So the first table headings must have a table row, and I'm going to define the name of the heading should be name. And I'm also going to grab more of them. So next we have our, like the email. All right, so just like do indentation, and I'm going to grab the other one, which should be our contact number, and next we have our designation, and the last thing that we need is the actions. So the action must have the delete and the added button. So let's give it the heading for the action. All right, so just after the table heading tags, and I'm going to define here the table body where we have the data. So inside the table body, again, we have our tr, and I'm going to give here a bootstrap class of table-secondary, right? And inside this tr, I'm going to define here the table data. So inside the table data, we have our name. So let's give it any dummy name here. So let's gonna give here John, and the email should be here. So let's give it the name of email should be john@gmail.com. So right after that we have our phone number. So let's give it here the phone number to be this. And last thing is the designation. So let's define here the designation should be web developer. All right, and then the action should have like a button. So inside the TDs, I'm going to define here the first should be, because I'm going to link that. So let's give it the anchor tag with the class of btn.btn-primary, and make that small. And I'm going to give it the margin towards the right should be 4. All right, so this is again the bootstrap. And so let's make that wrap this one, and the last we have our button, which should be our class of btn-danger, which is the bootstrap class and make that small. So it should be bdn-sm, and this should be a delete button, and the above should be the added button, right? So I'm gonna save this one, and let's go and check this out. So here you see now we have our name, email, contact number, and the designation with some 2 action buttons, right? All right, so basically this is all the dummy data. So I'm gonna show you the data that will become from the API. But before I should go with the API, I'm gonna show you how we're gonna set up the static data, how we're gonna show the static contacts list, and with the help of options API and as well as with the composition. So first we're going to go with the options API. I'm going to show you the both ways. So in order to do this first, so I'm going to first create here the script tag. So again, we have to define here the script. So it should be javascript.vue. So inside this export default, I'm going to create here a method with the name of data, which will return like the object. So I'm going to define here the first one should be it will return the objects, but here right inside the table body, I have to create here a directive. So the directive should be something that, like, we have some loops where we have to loop the data and show into our table body. So we have to define here our directive, which is v-4, and v-4 must have bring here the contact. It could be anything here, and it should be coming from the contact list. So it should be contacts. All right, and if I just try to save it, and you see here it shows the error that contact is defined, it should be element in iteration expect to have v-bind key. So we need some unique key as well. So we're gonna define here v-bind directive. It should have like the unique ID. So let's bring up here contact.id. All right, so the error goes away. All right, so that's the contacts that we're gonna pass with the help of the we're gonna return here the contacts list. So let's gonna define here down into it. So I'm gonna define here the contacts. So again, this is the option API. All right, so inside the context, I'm gonna like copy it, the JSON that I have created. So right inside the context, so I'm gonna define here the list of it should just keep that. All right. So now here I have like a list of contacts. You can like write this all out. Just want to create a very random like array of contacts, right? Now, if I'm going to show these contacts on the top, again, we have like options, right? So here, if I'm going to display the results, I'm going to remove this name here, and I'm going to define here contact dot name. So it should be contact dot email, and next we have our phone. And this one gonna be contact dot the designation. Oops. So contact dot designation, and that's it. All right. Now if I go back here and see, so now you're gonna see that we are able to see the list of the contacts, right? So that's the first way. That's the option API, and you see here it's still like still a lot of code, right? So we have to create a method, we have to define the export default, and inside the data we have the object of contacts, and we can also define here the methods as well. So if you have worked with the option API, I have already have a tutorial. So we can also define the methods, different methods inside this methods object, right? But we are not going to define any one of them. So I just want to show you that how we're going to do with the help of the option API. All right, so the other way is the composition API, which we're going to use in this project. So I'm going to remove everything from here inside the export default. So let's remove this all from here and stick with it. So in the other way, what I'm going to do here is there's a method with the name of setup. So inside the setup method, I'm going to define here the variable of contacts, and again it should be an array of contacts. So let's bring up here the list of the contacts that I have. So I've defined up here, and I just need to return it down here. All right, so if I just saves it, and if I go back into my browser, and you see now we can again see the listing of all the contacts, right? So as you could see, it's more cleaner way of defining the contacts, right? But another way is even more shorter, is I don't need any return here. I just want to remove this up, and I don't need any setup method here, so I'm going to remove this from here. All right, so, and there is no need of export default as well, so I'm going to also remove this from here. I remove it up here, and all I need here is to define here the setup. So I don't need to explicitly define the setup method down here, and it's all going to work. Now if I go back to the browser, and you see all works the same. So how cleaner and how organized is the composition API, right? So that's the latest version, Vue 3.4, like even Vue 3.2 version also has the same thing, right? So we can like define the setup method inside the script. We don't have to explicitly define the setup method and do everything inside that and then return the object. So it's how cleaner and how easier it is, right? So we're gonna stick with this way. All right, now the next part is that we have to install the Axios. So what are Axios? Axios is basically a HTTP library which we're gonna fetch the data from the backend and gonna show all the listing here inside our project. So I'm gonna install here Axios, npm install Axios. All right, so we installed that one, and I'm gonna do here is let's import the Axios. So I'm going to remove this all because we don't have to use here the static listing. So I'm going to remove this all from here. Just below the scripts, I'm going to define here the Axios. So import Axios from Axios. All right, so next I'm going to also define here the URL that could be our base URL. So if you go to my Postman, and I hope that it's open up in my project. So let me go and open the Postman, and I'm going to show you that we have our get all the contacts. And if I'm going to send the request, so far I just have like a single name. So that's the API that we created in the last video. So that's what we're going to show up here. So the URL should be the same. Make sure the URL should be correct, whatever the port number, whatever the IP or should be in your system. So it should be like this. So localhost port number 3000. So I'm going to go back into my project, and I'm going to define here the API URL. So let's create here a variable, and it should be http :/localhost port 3000 /API/contacts. All right. And that's the API URL, and I'm gonna create here a variable with the name of get contacts equal to, make sure it should be an async method. We're gonna have a async call, and let's bring up here the try catch, and inside the catch I'm gonna bring up here the error. If there's an error, just simply console.log. All right, so inside the get context, I'm going to define here the response. So it should be const response equal to await, and axios.get, and the URL we have to pass up here. As simple as that, right? And if I want to check this out, so I'm going to go to console.log and response.data. Need to do two things. First, we have to define here the onMounted. So basically it's a lifecycle hook. So it will like use onMounted for side effects like API calls. That's where we have to define. So I'm going to define onMounted, and inside the onMounted it will be a callback, and let's define here the I'm going to console.log and says that contact list component mounted. And what I'm going to do here is let's call this is the get context inside the onMounted method. Now if I go back here into my browser and just going to refresh this, and you see here now we're able to see what we have inside the API call. It's the same result that what you see in the Postman, right? So now we are able to fetch the data, and now we have to display up right into our contact list. All right, so now the next thing that I'm going to define here is inside the Vue, we have to define there is a ref method. So basically in Vue 3, ref is a function provided by Vue composition API that creates a reactive reference to a value. So if you want to trigger updates to the DOM when their value changes, so we have to use something known as ref. So I'm going to define right inside the parentheses, which is the ref, which is basically the reactive state. So when we want some changes from the API, so it will react and update the DOM. So right inside here, just after the API URL, I'm going to define here the context. So let's create here context and equal to ref, and it should be by default, it should be empty, right? And now if I want to display the context into the table, what I'm going to do here is let's define here context dot value. So basically value is where we are able to check the results. So if I'm going to console.log here, console.log and context.value, saves it, and you see now if I just want to refresh this, so it's still the empty one. That's the array that we have to display into our contact listing. So let's go back here, and whatever we have here inside our response, which is coming, so it should be context.value equal to response.data. Saves it, and now if I go back into here, you are able to see that you can see the list. Now sometimes there is an issue if you most probably in my case I didn't get the issue, and just because maybe I've defined the course policy. So let me go back into my backend project. Make sure you should be into your backend project and inside your server.js. And if I have defined here the course, most probably if you didn't get the errors, so that's fine. But if you get the error, there is a way that you can cope it out. So if you're gonna go into the new terminal, let's run here a command with the help of course policy. So if you get some errors, exceptions in the in your console, so regarding to the course, so here's a way that you have to install the course in your backend project, and I'm going to define here the course, which is const course equal to require course. So it should be course, and in order to use that one, all I need to do app.use and simply define here's the course method and saves it. So all gonna be okay here, right? Now in this case, if you have some issues, otherwise if it's okay, so you don't need to do that, right? So in my case it works. So if I'm going to refresh this, and you see now we are able to get the listing here from the API. So you see how easier and how good and how well the Vue.js is organized. Now if I'm going to create here a new listing with the help of Postman, let's create a new contact here inside the headers. It's all okay, application/JSON. I'm going to change the body to, let's create here the change the name to John. So it should be john@gmail.com, and change the contact number to be something different, and also change that to mobile developer. Now if I send the request, and now you see now it's created successfully, and if I go back to the browser and refresh this, and now you're able to see the two listings. So how well Vue.js is that with the help of composition API, things gets more organized and more cleaner. All right, so that's the listing part. Now let's work with the the create contact here. All right, so up to this point, we are able to see the contact list, but I have to show here the loader. So if I just want to refresh this, so you see nothing. So it should have some like a nice looking loader. So I'm going to install with the help of npm. So npm install Vue-spinner. So it's a very basic and easiest package to install. So let's go here and define the Vue-spinner. So just below to the mounted import, let's bring up here another one, which should be clip loader. I'm going to use, so there are a lot of things you can use. So I'm going to use here clip loader, and this should come from the Vue-spinner/source/clip loader. So there here you can see there are a lot of options. You can use any one of them. So I'm going to use here clip loader.vue. All right, so down here, I'm gonna do here is let's define here the loader to be true. So by default it should be true. So loading equal to, and it should be reactive. So let's make that true by default. And one more thing, if you can see, if it's the get context call. So if try, it's gonna get the response. If it's the successful, on the other case, if we have some error in the exception, so this is gonna run the catch. So another thing that we can use here is the finally. So inside finally, this is going to work. Either it's going to be error or either it's going to be successful. So finally is going to work. Here I'm going to define loading.value equal to false. All right, so once it loads successfully or it gives the error, so the loader should be like, let's make that loader value to be false. And how I'm going to define the loader, right inside right above the table class, I'm going to define here the clip loader. So let's bring up here the clip loader and v-if directive. This gonna only works if the loading is if it's true. So let's close this one, and on the other case, if it's works, so we're gonna use here v-else directive, right? So it's like a very basic if condition. So if the loading is true, so this is gonna run the clip loader, and on the other case, if it's not, so this is gonna like show the table listing all. All right, let's see. And if I'm gonna refresh this, so you see that it's a nice looking loader. If you can see it flashes it out. Right, so that's how we can bring up here the loader. All right, so we are done with the listing part. So let's gonna work with the create contact, right? And we are gonna create here a very basic form with the help of Bootstrap. So let's go into it. So here I have like add contact.view, where I'm gonna create a very basic form with like 4 fields. So let's remove this h3 here and bring up here the container, and with the margin top to be 4, and right inside we have a row. And inside the row, let's give it the class, which is the call-md-6. So these are all the grid classes for the Bootstrap. And inside here, I'm going to bring up my form. And inside the form, so we don't need here any action. We will discuss about what we're going to use here, which is the @submit directive. So let's bring up here the form-group class, and inside the form-group, I'm gonna define my input type equal to text and the class, which is the form-control. All right, so we don't need any ID. I'm gonna remove this one, and let's bring up here the name to be, it should be a name. But again, we don't need here name, so let's remove this one and make it very basic. So let's give here a placeholder to be enter name. All right, so that's all we need here in the form-group. So I'm going to copy this one, and we need here another field for the email. Let's bring up here email and change that placeholder to enter email, and that's it. So another field that we need here is for the phone number. So it should be of type equal to text, and change that to enter contact, right? And or maybe you can change that enter phone. All right, so the last field that we have is the enter designation. So make this to be designation, and that's it, all we need. So this is like a very basic form. So just below the template, we have the scripts. Let's define here with the help of javascript.vue. And as we told that we are going to use here composition API. So let's make here the setup. So we don't need to do a lot of things by hand. So this is going to like take care of everything. So it just saves it, right? And just look at the form here and refresh this. So this looks something like this. And the reason why I just want to have some like space from the above. So I'm going to use here the break statement. So let's bring up here break to have some spaces. You can use here the CSS classes if you want. I just want to make things very basic so you guys know how you're gonna like submit the form, right? And the last thing that I need here is the submits button. So let's below to it, I'm gonna create here a button of type submits, and let's give it here the class of median dash dark, and make that small, and let's bring up here the margin top to the before, so there should be some space from the top, right? And let's give it the text to be submits. All right, saves it. And if I go back to the browser, so now the form has been looks like this, right? So we are done with the form, very static form. This is gonna do nothing here for now. All right, so let's create here the form functionality first. So we have like here a directive to submit the form, which is the @submit. So this like property help us to submit the form, and in order to prevent the form from submitting, so we have like a .prevent, right? And you can give it the name, any name here. So I'm going to give it the name of save contact, right? That's what we need. So just below and in the scripts, we have to define this variable. So let's give it the name of const and make that save contact equal to, so let's give it the arrow function here. And as we are going to work with the Axios later, so this should be a async method. So I'm going to define here async for now. And if you want to submit the form in the Vue.js, so we have like a v-bind property. So it should be v-model, right? So let's define the attribute properties that we have for the contact. But before I should define the v-model, I'm going to bring it into the scripts and define the attributes that we have. So inside the const contact, I'm going to define it should be const contact equal to, and it should be in the ref, and let's define all those properties. So name, it should be empty by default, email to be empty. And next we have our phone, and the last one is the designation. All right, so these are all to be empty by default. And because we are going to use here ref, so let's import up here. So import ref, so this should be coming from the Vue. So import ref from the Vue. All right, and let's bring it into the parentheses. All right. All right, so this should be coming from the Vue, and it should be in the single dots, right? And let's also bring up here the Axios, because we're gonna work with the HTTP client. So let's bring up here Axios from, so it's gonna already automatically import it up here. And let's bring up it, let's make like it's down, it's fine, it still works, but let's make that very so let's console the log and check, but we have to define here first v-model. So here v-model, this contact coming from the variable that we define here. So this should be contact.name, and same for all, like contact.email and the phone and the designation. So let's define v-model for all. So I'm going to define v-model equal to contact.email. This is going to be v-model to be contact.phone. And same here for v-model equal to contact.designation. All right, saves it. And let's go down here and bring up here the HTTP library. So before I should just submit that, I'm going to console the log, and just to show you guys like what will be the output. So console the log and bring up here the contact values are, right? So let's define that contact dot value. Saves it, and let's gonna check if it's gonna submit it, right? So let's inspect this out, and I'm gonna open up my console and refresh this. Yeah, and let's write here the name. So let's make it sarah@gmail.com and some phone number, and let's give it the designer, web designer. So it should be submits this, and you can see now we are able to see the contact values from the proxy object, and that's going to contain the name, email, phone, and the designation. All right, so we are able to submit the request and get the values. And another thing that I'm going to do here is if I'm not going to define anything, let's make this refresh, and still it's going to show the empty object. I'm going to define here the validations here. So let's define the validation, and I'm also going to use here the package, which is basically the toast Vue-toast notification. So let's first install the package here, and let's give it their npm install, and let's bring up here Vue-toast notification @ next. All right, so this is going to install the Vue-toast notification, and I also have to bring this in the main.js file, because that's where we're going to use this one. So just right under the right after the we don't need that main.css, so simply just remove this one and make this create app a little above. So it's not a big issue, it's all work, but make things very like sequential. So it should be create app. I'm going to bring up here the toast. So let's bring up here toast, and it's going to be coming from the Vue-toastification. And also I have to import the CSS for this. So Vue-toastification /dist/index.css. all right, so it should be index.css. That's the one that we needed. And now if I just need to use this, so all I'm going to use here is app.use, just like we use here the router. I'm going to bring up here the toast, and also we need the router. So that's how you're going to use the toast and the router. So whatever you're going to use, you can simply do like .use. All right, so just saves it, and if I go back to my add contact.vue, and what I'm going to do here is we have to import this one. So let's also import here Vue-toastification. So just below the import of Axios, I'm going to define here import and use toast, and let's bring up here from the Vue-toastification. all right, so we use the toast, and we have to also bring up here the variable with the name of toast equal to use toast. So because the toast is one that can provide us the toast.error, and like there are other properties like toast.success, so whatever you're gonna use. So here for the validation, I'm going to define with the toast.error. This is going to show us in the red color. So let's define below the console.log. So if the value, so let's bring up here the if the value dot, it should be contact.value. Yeah. So if the contact.value dot name, or if the contact.value dot email, and as well as we have to define like, so contact dot value dot let's bring up here phone, and also I need to define for the contact, so I just missed to bring up here or condition, and let's define here the contact dot value dot designation. So if it's empty for all, So I'm gonna define here the toast.error. So I just missed to, this should be, yeah. So let's define here the toast.error. And I'm gonna define here all fields are required. Saves it, and now if I go back to the browser and refresh this, so it says the requested module Vue does not provide an export named toast. So let's go into the main.js file and check this out. So I'm going to go into my main.js, and here you see, so basically it should be, just remove these parentheses from here and saves it. And if you're gonna refresh, even though it's already reloaded, and submits it, and you see now you're gonna see the nice looking Vue toastification. All right, so that's our validation part, and let's go into the add contact.vue and submits the request. So now we are almost done with the validations, and now we are gonna submit it. So just right in the after the validation part, I'm gonna define here the try catch. So it should be try, and let's define here the catch, which brings up the error, and console the log and define here the errors. And inside the try, I'm going to define here the URL equal to, and it should be http://localhost and port to be 3000/API/contacts. So as we know that it's going to be a post request, so I'm in the response. So let's define here the response equal to await, as it's like the async. So let's define axios.post request. And now these post requests going to bring up two things. The first going to be the URL that we have and the contact.value. So the whole object of the contacts that's coming from here, right? And that's what we already show up into the console. All right, so this is going to bring up everything into the contact.value, and right after this, let's give it the console log and check the response. So console log and print here the response. All right, so let's go back and refresh, and let's write here the name to be Sarah. So sarah@gmail.com, and let's bring up here the phone. And it should be web designer. All right, so let's submit the request, and you see that it shows the status 201. The status is created, and if I'm gonna go into my contact list, but you see here still the values are in the field, and we haven't seen any notification. But just to check this out, if it's shown up here, and now we are able to see the new listing, right? So let's go into the create contact and clear the text field and show the notification. So in order to do that, let's enter the response. I'm gonna define if that response dot status. So we have a status code which is 201. So if the response dot status is 201, so let's first define the toast dot success message. So I'm gonna show here the message contact added. So successfully, and we have to clear the value. So in order to clear it, so contact.value and make that empty. So I'm going to do all the same for all. So it should be contact.value.name. First it should be the name. Next we have to bring up here the email, and also for the phone, and last for the designation, and that's all we need. So we are clearing the values, and we're gonna show the successful message, right? So just saves it and just add a new entry here. I'm gonna define here the new entry to be, let's add here Brad. So brad@gmail.com, and let's bring up here the phone, and you can say Fullstack developer. So if I just saves it, just make the spellings correct. And if I submit the request, and you see now the contact added successfully, and we are able to refresh all the fields, right? So now we are done with the submits form, right? Now if I go back to the contact list, and that's all our contact listing, and we have our like added button. So for the added route, you can see if I just want to click on here, so it should bring up here the ID. So every single entry must have the ID. So once I click on here, it's going to take us to the added form, and all the values should be reflected in our added contact list, right? In the added contact form. So if I'm going to show you in the MongoDB, so we have something which is the underscore ID, and this ID is something that can route to our added contact and bring up all the data which is in the contact list. And if you can see my routes, if I'm going to show you real quick in the routes.js, so that's the basic route that we created for this. So it should be have a /contact/:ID. So there should be some ID that's going to be passed and the data will be shown. So I'm going to go into my added contact.view. So first thing first, I'm going to remove this from here, and I'm going to show here the form for the added contact.view. So I'm going to copy everything from the add contact.view. So let's copy it everything into the add contact.view and bring up here inside the added contact.view. So a few things that I just don't want to do for now. Let's just remove this, all the logic, which is the const save contact. We are going to do here update contact. So just remove this from here. We do need the toast, and we do need these use Axios library. We do need the ref. So just keep everything there. And we also have to define here v-model, which is already here. So just change this request to the update contact, right? And that's what the action that we have to create here. So just bring it up here. And if I go into my contact list.view, so basically here, there is one change that I need. I need to change that anchor tag to be router-link, and as well as this the same. So router-link, and change that href to 2. And I'm going to bring up here, so it should be :2 equal to, and we're going to change the route based on the name, which should be added contact. So let's bring up here added contact, make sure it should be the same name, whatever the name you have. And we have to pass here the parameter, which should be params, right? And inside the params, we must have to pass here the ID, which is the ID : and it should be contact._ID, and that's the ID which is in the MongoDB collection. That's the ID we have to pass, which is _ID. It shouldn't be _ID. And this is what is coming from the routes, which I'm going to show you. Again, this is the name route. So let's go into the routes.js, and that's where you see. So this is the added contact, and this ID, again, I'm going to show you. So this _ID is coming from the collection of the MongoDB class. So there you see. So this is the _ID, and this is the ID we're going to pass it into the added contact. So if I'm going to refresh this and go into the edit button, and now you see on the top of it, we are going to pass the ID here in our as a URL. So we're going to display all the results which coming from this ID and show into our text fields, because we are going to update the contact. So let's bring up here the request to get the contact ID. So I'm going to define here the request for the get contact ID. So let me go into edit contact.view. All right, so let's define here a variable with the name of get contact by ID to get all the results on the from the database, right? So I just want to bring this use toast on top of it. So let's bring it up here. And I also need to bring up here the routes, which I'm going to do later. Let's first define here the get contact by ID. So get contact by ID, and as it's like an async method, and let's define here the arrow and try catch. So try and catch and bring up the error here, and right inside here let's bring up the console.log and bring up here the error. All right, and inside the try option I'm going to define the URL, which should be so let's define here the URL, which should be http://localhost port 3000/API/contacts, and let's bring up here the ID. So now in order to bring up here the ID, which is dynamically coming from here, so what I'm gonna do here is let's define here something which is known as the use route. And as you could see here, that which is basically coming from the Vue-router. And if I go into the browser and if I click on the edit, you see this is the ID, and I want to bring this one and pass it as the ID from the route. So how I'm going to do this? So first I'm going to import the route. So just like bring this under the Axios. So let's bring up the import and define here. So two things that I need here is, first I need here is the use router, and the second thing that I need here is the use route. So like there's a difference. So use router and use route. So basically they are all coming from the Vue-router. Right, so the use router is in this case I'm going to use when I have to navigate from one page to the another. This is where the use router use, and the use route is used when I have to get the params ID. So what I'm going to do here is, let me bring up here the variable, and just above the toast I'm going to use here const route, and let's bring up here the use route. All right, and in the case of the router, I'm going to create another variable with the name of router, and let's bring up here the use router method. All right, so as I told, this is going to be used when I have to push from one page to the another, and this is used when I have to get the ID. So let's pass here the dynamic ID, and I'm going to do it with the help of route. So route.params.id, and that's how I'm going to get the ID for the URL. And the next thing is very simple, all very basic, is let's get the response. So const response equal to await, and as it's the get request, so we just need to pass the URL here. All right, and right below it, so let's define contact.value equal to response.data. So this is going to get all the data for the specific ID. All right, so we already bring up here the console, and in order to call this using the onMounted, I'm going to define here right just below it. Let's define here onMounted, and this coming from the Vue, and this is going to be a callback, and let's define here the method with the name of get contact by ID. All right, and just saves it, and just make sure it's already imported here from the Vue. So if I go back here into my text tree and just refresh this, and now you're able to see all the data. Now if I go to my home screen and see the results for the Brad, and it's going to show the results for the Brad, right? And definitely it's not going to be update, because we still have to do any functionality related to it. So I'm going to change first the name of the button to be to submit to update. So let's change that first. So go above it and change that to update. All right, and I'm going to define here the update option. So as I change that submit button to update contact, so let's create here the const update, and just I think I have to move down to this method to get contact by ID. I have to create another one, which is the const. Let's give it the name of update contact, and it's going to be async method. So let's bring here the callback, and this is going to be arrow function, and inside this I'm going to copy all the validation which I did already into my add contact.vue. So let's bring it up here and copy this one. I'm going to go into my edit contact, and this is all for the validation. All right, so that's for the update contact, and just under the update contact, just underneath that, let's define here try catch and bring up here the error. So inside the catch, I'm going to bring up here the error and just simply console.log. All right, so right inside here, the try, I'm going to define the URL first. So const URL equal to, so the URL should be in the backticks. I'm going to define the base URL, which would be localhost. It should be /localhost port number 3000/API/contacts, right? And I'm also going to pass here the route param ID, which has been passed here. So route.params.id. So once we navigate that, so this is going to bring up here the ID. So let's define here the response. So const response equal to await, and this is going to be a put request. So axios.put, and bring up here the URL first and the contact.value, that the value that we need to update. And just simply console the log and check this out. So console the log and bring up here the response.data. And I also need to show the status code. So if response.status is equal to 200, which is coming in the response, you can check in the console. So then show the toast notification to be toast.success, and bring up here the toast.success, and it should be contact updated successfully. All right, and I just need to push and navigate to the listing page. So router.push, and let's bring up here the name, which should be in the route.js. You can see that contact list exists. So contact list, right? So make sure it should be the correct spelling, and that's all we need. So let's check this out. So I'm going to go to my added contact listing, and let's change the first one. So I'm going to click on the edit button and change the email to 12, and change the number and make that software engineer. And now if I'm going to update this one, and you see there's a nice looking toast notification, and it's going to route us to the contact listing page. So that's how you're going to update, and let's going to work with the delete option. All right, so with the deletion, I have to go to my contact list. That's where we have like the button. So I'm going to go to my contact list.view, and I'm going to change the button here. So for the button, we have to bring here something which is the @click. So let's bring up here @click equal to, and again, the same thing that we need is to pass the ID that we need to delete. So I'm going to create here a method with the name of delete contact. And remember, with the contact._id, we are able to get the ID from here. And I'm going to create this method down to our listing. So into the scripts, inside the just below the get contacts, let's create here another method with the name of delete contact. So get so it should be delete contact, right? That's the name of the method that we created, and it's going to be async method, and we have to pass here the ID as I have passed here, and arrow function, and right inside here I'm going to define try catch. All right, so this is going to bring up the error, and if there's some error, let's bring a console log the error. All right, so we need to have some confirmation here. So first bring up here the URL here, and inside the URL I already have an API URL which is here, right? So I'm going to pass it up here. So it should be $API URL, and definitely we need to pass the ID which is coming from the which is again coming from here, that contact._id. I'm going to show you real quick. So this is going to be ID, and let's first console the log and check the ID. So console the log and bring up here the ID. All right, and let's go back here into the listing. I'm going to inspect and go into the console. Let's delete this one, and you can see we have the ID based on whatever the ID that we have. So we are able to console the ID, and now I'm going to do here is to give the Axios call. So let's bring up here the Axios first, which I believe we have. Yeah, well, definitely we have. And next to the URL, I'm going to delete this. So first we need to have a confirmation. So if confirm, so in the confirmation, I'm going to ask, so are you sure, sorry, it should be, are you sure you want to delete the contact? So if it's surety, so let's give it the response. So const response equal to await, and give it the call for the Axios. So Axios.delete, and bring up here the URL, And right underneath that, I'm going to check the console if everything is okay. So console the log response, and I'm going to check the response status. So if the response dot status is like 200, so I'm going to use here the toast. So I haven't bring it up here, so let's first bring up here the toast. So just after the clip loader, I'm going to define here import use toast, which is coming from the Vue-toastification. All right, and after that, let's define here the one more thing, which is the toast variable, and this toast variable must have the use toast. All right, and saves it. And all I need is here after the deletion, I'm going to show that the toast.success message. So it should be inside this status, right? If that response.status is equal to 200, so I'm going to toast.success and just show the message. So it should be contact deleted successfully. All right, and I also need to refresh when we have to delete. So let's call this method again. So we need to refresh that in order to check this out. All right, so we are good to go. Let's gonna check this out. So I'm gonna refresh this, and if I'm gonna delete this one, so it's gonna ask the, are you sure you want to delete the contact? And if I press OK, so the contact deleted successfully. All right, so you see how best we have created the contact app using MongoDB, Vue Express, and everything is all from the scratch, step by step. So I hope you guys love it, and we will create more interesting videos in the next part. Alright guys, so before I should leave here, I just want to show you this channel, YZ the Happiness. So I just want to give the shout out for this channel. This channel is very near and dear to my family, so I just hope you guys will love some interesting videos, right? So thank you for watching, and I want to see you guys for the next time.